Well, this time we will concentrate in four painters. We will show the esoteric ideas behind these four painters. The four are classified as painters of the abstract current or of the symbolist current. Some of them are worldwide known, like Kandinsky or Mondrian. Some others are not so too known in the international field, especially if you are not a specialist in the art or a history of art or something more specific. We choose for this specific talk these authors because they are representative and because we like them, but we could choose any other. There are a lot of painters that have tried to deliver a message behind the picture, the obvious figurative pictures, but we had to choose someone, so we choose these four. The first is an Argentinian painting that is a little that has a little of abstraction and a lot of symbolism in his pictures. He was born in 1887 and he died in 1963. He was Argentinian, as I have told you, but he was educated in Europe, and in London specifically, he took contact with the Theosophical Society and some other occult movements. Then he moved to Paris, where he continued in contact with artists and with the occult world. And then he finished his 10 years stay in Europe, in Italy, in Milan specifically, and in Germany. We have also Pierre Mondrian. He's a very, very well-known artist, so I have not too much to say about him. He was, as you can see here, about the same age and he lived in the same period than Jules Solar. He was one of the founders of the abstract painting movement. Here is a portrait of him. We will talk about Ilma af Klint, a Swedish painter, about the same time. You can see here 1862, 1944. And he's not too known, but now, little by little, you will find in the social networks and in TV and in the movies some information about her. We will talk a lot of her today. And finally, we will talk about Kandinsky, that is the king of the abstraction, is well known of every one of you, I hope. So let's start. First of all, we have to be clear about what is art and what is the place of art in the occult or spiritual knowledge. So we will start with this definition I took from a dictionary, a Spanish dictionary that I have translated to English, that says that art is the manifestation of human activity, through which, and pay attention to this, the real is interpreted or the imaginary is captured with plastic, linguistic, or sound sources. Because in this definition, we are not restricted to the visual arts, to the painting, but also is the poetry, the and the music, of course, that are two manifestations, the two major manifestations of art, all together with the painting and the sculpture, of course. So I will say it again, the real is interpreted. So art is an interpretation of the reality, or the imaginary, so the product of our thought, is captured in those media that could be visual or linguistic or sounds, so or music, okay? We will talk about these three quotations about Kandinsky. He says, artistic creation is the daughter of its time. That means that you can express or interpret the reality and express it in some language. We will now talk about the painting as a language, but this language will be conditioned with the time and the place in which it is delivered. This means, for example, that a painter will do will have some conditions of his art, because it's not the same to paint in Greece, for example, 3 centuries before Christ, than Egypt 14 centuries before Christ, or in the 21st century. You will be conditioned by your time, because the environment of the time, specifically the age and the culture that encourages you, will condition the way you will deliver this message. So that's why he said that creation is daughter of its time. And this another quotation is also important for today, that he says, there is another search in the work, that of spiritual aspiration, the essential. So for Kandinsky and for all these 4 painters we are talking about today, had the intention of using the painting to allow the spectator to reach some spiritual world, some spiritual knowledge that they call the essential. So in the abstract painters, they use language and they try to simplify the language, to keep from the painting all that is not essential, to allow you to walk through the path that brings you to this spiritual world, or to this world of essentials. For example, we have some other thinkers that say some are artists, some others no, are not. That says, for example, that the art is to illuminate the depths of the heart as its mission. So, to illuminate the depths of the heart is the mission of the artist. So the art and the illumination are together. So the mission is not to decorate or to bring psychological comfort or some kind of gratification, but to illuminate, excuse me, the depth of the heart. Blavatsky, very well known of all here, says literature, music, and art are the first and most sensitive spheres in which spiritual revelation settles. So says literature, music, and art in general, not specifically philosophy or books. She says that art is a way to reach spirituality. This is not a very fashion between our theosophical study groups. We are used to study a lot, to meditate, perhaps to do some service, but art is not in the center of our activities. I think, I don't know why, but that's as we are theosophists. This is another thinker, Eisner, that said, art offers a visionary sense in the human experience. Art reveals the ineffable and broadens our consciousness. So these are through ways to achieve spiritual status as efficient or perhaps more efficient than the intellectual work we are used to do. And finally, this quotation of Gina Dayadasa, you all know that he was one of the international presidents of the Theosophical Society. Oh, I forgot to translate it to English, sorry. That here says, art has the great quality to make or to help to go from the transitory to the eternal. Well, so as a synthesis, all this wanted to show you that the art has the function of teaching about the ultimate reality, about the spiritual world that is behind the apparent and illusory world we are, all of us, living and thinking that is the real world. So has the same function that the spiritual books, that meditation and some other activities we are used to perform. Here you have, for example, a fragment of this Mondrian, the Dutch painter, and we are familiar of his paintings, but in general we do not use to see this kind of work of Mondrian. We will see others in a few minutes, but take a look at this. This is not an abstract painting, apparently. You see, it's clearly a child. You see a girl, particularly. Here there is some insect or flower. She's regarding, perhaps. She's looking at, perhaps. Perhaps not. We don't know. But was his intention to paint a girl looking or some natural thing? Well, he writes about this painting to a friend, and hopefully we have the quotation here. He says to his friend, I wanted to make a girl considered only in a devotional aspect. So the subject is not the girl, but the devotion. Devotedly contemplated or with great devotion. And pay attention to this. By doing the hair in that particular color, red, I wanted to downplay the material side of things, suppressing association with hair, dress, etc., and foregrounding the spiritual. I believe that that color and line can do a lot to achieve this goal. So he painted the girl to speak about devotion, and he chose the colors, the lines, the expression of the face to express devotion, not for us to see a girl as I see with my regular eyes, but to to see the devotion that is behind the expression of this obvious image of a known thing, that is a girl looking at the sky. So the painting was a tool to teach us about devotion in this case. And we will see that in the first painter we will talk about in a few seconds, as well, and in the others that are the first is a symbolist. The three last ones will be abstractionist. In both cases, they want to say things that are behind the obvious message that we can see with our physical eyes. So let's go. The four painters. We will start, as I said, with the Argentinian, that is this Jules Solar. Jules Solar lived in the 20th century. He was born in Argentinian. And well, we will go directly to the paintings. You see, for example, look at this painting. What do you see? Image. Well, we see some things we know. Some people all dressed in black, walking in a line through a circle that goes up. We see they in black, all of them in black, but we can see some flames. We can see, if we get closer, some heads or some skulls here. We see some boys, probably some girls, some women. Something is in the middle of the scene, like a child, perhaps, because it's very much more small than the others. And at the end of this white path, white and circular path, we see like a door. It's construction, a white construction with a door, and a golden line, a light at the end, or some other flame, perhaps. And when we see the title of this picture is Boreal. So those things, those images are known. We have to put it in some, we have to harmonize it and to read something behind this symbolic picture. So perhaps as a esoterist, he could talk about souls, disembodied souls that are marching through this path to the post-mortem, for example, process. Or perhaps they are also souls, and each soul carries those schools, meaning the different reincarnations, and they are making the human evolution. And at the end, there is like a temple with the golden light or golden flame and the door as an objective they have to reach, a goal they have to reach as the illumination that finishes the human evolution. Well, we have the freedom to make our own interpretation, of course, and to arrive to a personal interpretation, because there is not a specific text that explains each of his pictures. Let's see another one. For example, in this case, we have another picture called Sand Dance, because you can see here human figures dancing. You have some women, some men, and some symbols like the snakes with their tongues, bifid, some stars of 6 points, some stars of 5 points, And if you, we have music and flags, and you can see also that most of the hands are up as signaling the heaven, to the sky. That means they are pointing the spiritual world. You will see other that they are pointing earth, that's the material world. So we see a lot of esoteric symbols and a dance in a circular way, with a circulation in as a circle. And you see in the upper row, their hands are, they are taken by their hands, and the number of characters here is 7. I think the author used a lot of esoteric symbols and put it together for some reason, and it's up to us to make our interpretation. Here you see the same subject, another dance. You see the swastik here, the Argentinian flags, perhaps they are festing some national event. We see other crosses, like the cross of St. Andrew, the stars of 5 points, the start of 6 points also, and the hands points the ground, are pointed to the material world. And here we have the same subject. You see, it's like an obsession of him, the dance, the music, and the characters are painted as crosses or 5-point stars, a lot of swastiks, other symbols. So this author used a lot of ideas. For example, I have a short list of symbols that are repeated in his works. The swastikas, you'll know, an ancient sign loaded with positive connotations. The stars of David, that is the 6-point star, made up of 2 overlapping triangles, could point more to the coherence between celestial and terrestrial events. The crosses of St. Andrews would symbolize Christ and his message of brotherhood. The number 7, that is always in the characters. Generally, there are 7 characters, not always, but most of the times. The music. And we can think about the allegory of the universal movement, in which the elements dance according to superior logic and present the correspondence with the terrestrial events. The characters point their hands downwards, which is more linked to the material plane, what I have explained. They advance to the left, a direction though with a receptive lunar gene character, because he was a very deep knower about the I Ching and the Chinese philosophy. So many things are taken from the Chinese world. Well, here more notes about the work of Jules Solar. The model man or star of cosmic or cosmic man, this anthropomorphic figure with 5 points, head and limbs unfolded, represents the human spirit reaching the ends of the universe. The sun and the moon, you can see here. The stars that constitutes the eyes of the universe. The crosses, well, and some other things I have already spoken. Here we have, excuse me, some of others ideas he took and he used very often, that as the sun and the moon. Well, we are repeating a little. We will spare this, but I will take some minutes to examine this series of paintings that are called difficult cells, because for me it's a clear allegory about the human evolution. You see this personage, these characters dressed on blue, that are trying to climb from one level to another level through these stairs. That could be an allegory of the lights that bring us to closer and closer in different levels through the pilgrimage of the soul, through the world of matter, until they reach the top of this mountain or building, where we have two people looking to those who are climbing, and perhaps trying to help or to give courage to the climbers, to the souls, to move forward from one level to another one. And in some of the cells, we have also some people, and we don't know if they are there to help and to put difficulties, to create difficulties, to act as additional and active obstacles for our spiritual development, that are no other things that the different probations we have during our spiritual development. And here there is a similar one, but with different interpretation, that you can see these like mountains, lines of mountains with valleys, that these small personages, these small characters in blue, try to cross through these points of, these bridges of wood, and they go from one mountain change to another one through doors. They traverse doors, and you see that we have three personages, three people close to us, then two more people a little far away, and at the end there is a light, a golden light, a sun, as or trying perhaps to tell us that there is the spiritual world there, and we have to go from the green to cross all the chromatic specter or the chromatic arc, and to reach the golden place at the end of this sort of mountain obstacle we have to traverse, to cross, to reach our spiritual goal. So you can see here that the same subject is treated in different of his works, but they're all the same. In this one particularly, you can see at the end, in the last mountain change, there is someone who reached the golden place, and he has an arm pointing the sky, as telling, here I am, please come, do not be discouraged because it's difficult, but it's possible to reach this spiritual world, this golden world. Okay, I think we finish with this painter. We will move to the second one I chose, that is Kandinsky. He, as you all know, he was born in Russia, but he lived most of his life out of his country, specifically in Germany and in France. And he is considered as one of the founders of the abstract painting current or stream. I don't know if in English you talk about streams of painters or current one. You understand me? So we will see, for example, we will start with this picture. No one would tell us that he's a Kandinsky work, because it's very different from all Kandinsky pictures that are known, of course. This is not an abstract painting. This is symbolic painting, and is one of his first works when he was young. So here you can find, of course, a lot of known things, people, for example. There is a lot of people here. They are perhaps in a party, no? Because it looks like a celebration. There is some dance here. I can see people dancing or playing. We can see here, for example, for example, music, playing music, dancing in the right of the picture, here dancing. But when we took a view with more perspective, we see that in the first plane, we have these people that do not match with a party. You see, for example, here, like a monk or a pilgrim from, we don't know from where, but with a long beard, with this here in the hand, as all the wise people are represented. Here we have a priest of the Orthodox Christian church. Here we have perhaps some representation of another priest, a dark priest, of course, but with a Christian cross, a skull here in the hat. And here some image of like the Virgin Mary, you know, some sacred woman with a child. So we have in the same image two worlds. Perhaps the spiritual world in the first plane, and in the back plane, the material or illusionary world, playing, music, dancing, etc. And we have all this happening in the field. But in the mountain, up, there is another image. Look at this. This is like a castle, like a church or a holy place, perhaps, as telling us that there is like a fight in the bottom between the spiritual and the material, but in the up, there is the spiritual or the celestial world we can reach if we do our homework as spiritual students. Perhaps. This is a symbolic Kandinsky work. Some years later, he moved to this kind of painting, where we can still recognize some images. For example, we see in the center the representation of a horse, look, with a jockey, riding a horse. The horse is jumping something. We have behind 4 people in a line. We have other people here, see? We have perhaps some strange animals like a wolf, perhaps. You see? A bear. I'm using my imagination because it's not written what is exactly is each of these images, but we have an image that is getting closer to the abstraction we will see in a few minutes. He is representing known things in a language that is not the figurative language, in the sense of he's not trying to represent the physical reality as he as it is, excuse me, as if it were a photography of the reality, like the painters of the Renaissance did, and moving to a representation of the reality full of symbolism or subjectivity. I don't know if I'm clear. If I am not, we can talk about this in the question and answers session. Then, here right to this. Here we have a full abstract painting. Here we cannot recognize anything, any known thing. We have some geometric figures, that means nothing. We have lines, we have points, we have color, and the most important perhaps is the harmony. There is a composition of these elemental elements, these essential elements that are devoid of all figurative significance, because he said, as perhaps Mondrian also said, that to represent the ultimate reality, the spiritual things that are that have no form, that have that are, we could say in theosophical language, arupa, with no form, we should not use figurative elements. So if we use just the essentials of the plastic art, which are the color, the line, the plane, and the harmony that relates all these elements, we will get the idea of this ultimate reality or spiritual reality we pretend to introduce in the spectator. This is the message of these painters that were related closely with the theosophical and spiritual movements. And Jules Solar, Kandinsky, Mondrian, and the fourth, the Ilma, were conscious about its mission as artists. It's different because some other artists, Impressionists, or even painters of the Renaissance, they fulfilled this mission, but perhaps they were not conscious, they were not aware of this mission. In this case, 20th century painters had the intention to share the spiritual knowledge through its works. Finally, we have this other pure abstraction, very known, this blue painter, that has the same elements: color, first of all, color, then simple figures, lines, points, and of course, the harmony. The harmony is, of course, essential, because without harmony, there is nothing, there's no message. We should have the possibility of arriving to a different level of consciousness through the contemplation of this kind of pictures. In Argentina, once we tried to make an exercise and for a group, and put the exercise consisted in meditating, concentration with so we put figurative painting, and people contemplated the painting and then closed their eyes and made 5 or 10 minutes meditation, focusing on the painting. And then we did the same exercise with an abstract painting, and everyone agreed that the painting was much more inspiring, the abstract painting, excuse me, was much more inspiring than the normal or figurative painting at the time of trying to expand a little our conscious. Finally, he says in one of his main books, because he has a couple of books about art and spirituality. This work is called On the Spiritual in Art. And he writes, color is the key, The eye is the hammer, and the soul is the piano with its strings. The artist is the hand that, through one key or another, adequately makes the human soul vibrate. So he was very, very, very aware of his mission. And here you have an interpretation of his mission, how to do it. Let's move to the following author, that is Mondrian. As you all know, he was Dutch, and he was about the same time, he lived in about the same time than Kandinsky and Jules Solar. He lived in Holland, but he spent a long time also in Paris. He stressed the idea of harmony and balance, the same as Kandinsky, and he also wrote a lot of material we can read, of course in English, about his thoughts and about the mission of the artist and the advantages of the abstraction over the figurative painting. And he also made an evolution, as we have recently show you. We saw the girl as a representation of the devotion, and he made also an evolution to this kind of paintings. As you can see here, what do you see? I see nothing. But my wife, Annabella, said, no, there is not nothing there. This is not a child work. You can see a lot of things. You see, for example, color, and there is no any color. You can see the primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. And you can see also the black, that is no color, and the white, that is all color. This is not like the a cosmogenesis progression, for example, from nothing, that is the black, through everything, that is the white. There is not the three primary colors that are as the three gunas of the primordial Prakriti, that are the source of all kind of differentiated matter. Is that perhaps what Mondrian tried to tell us, that in the simple things, devoid of all known characteristic, is the real knowledge, the spiritual world that is very simple, if we can go beyond the diversity. So in this, that is nothing, perhaps there is everything. We will pay some attention to this work that is called Evolution. So we have to see this. This is a threefold unity. So we will see first this image. There is a woman, perhaps, and he's looking at the sky, eyes closed, no smile, or a smile that is not a smile. We see here two flowers, red flowers, with a triangle pointing to the earth, down to the material world. And you see here also triangles pointing down, here here in the two breasts, and also here. Then we go to the other image. We see perhaps the same person, but here, look, there is a change. The flowers are different. There is a star, yellow, not red, but that are 6-point stars, triangles. Perhaps the reds try to say the same, perhaps. But the triangle in the center are pointing to the sky, up. And here, there is some changes, you see, pointing up and down. And here also, up and down, not down. So perhaps this a sleeping soul, material soul like ours, perhaps, here is the person who is in the process of awakening to the spiritual reality. And here in the center, we have these triangles pointing up, not up and down like this, but up. Same here. And the triangles had disappeared, the flowers, and are replaced with this white thing. But the most important is eyes are open. Open to what? Perhaps to the spirituality. Well, to finish with this Mondrian, here, this work, another thing that was nothing to me before knowing Annabella, and you see white and black, just white and black. Perhaps it's not, these lines, short lines, are not put in an aleatory way. Perhaps there are some symbols here, perhaps. A lot of crosses, many kind of crosses. And as we know, the cross has a deep significance for theosophists. No? As Blavatsky says, we have the Greek cross, the swastik cross, the An cross, the Tau cross, all of them with a lot of signification. But well, this is not a lecture about esoteric symbols and all those. But you can imagine that perhaps this is pure abstraction, white and black, just that to show us that the simplicity is that will bring us to the reality, to the ultimate reality, or perhaps there are some symbols at the same time, in the same picture. This is one of the interesting things of the art. We can make our interpretation with a lot of freedom. This is a quotation of Madame Blavatsky. She says, "The philosophical cross oppositely extends its arms in the respective horizontal and perpendicular directions, that is, the wide and height divided by the divine geometer at the point of intersection. It is a symbol of human existence because the points of the cross inscribed in the circle indicate birth, life, death, and immortality." So for who knows the interpretation of these symbols with very little, say a lot of things. Well, and finally, we arrive to our late author that is not too known. You see, he was born in Switzerland, in Sweden. At the end, he lived in the same age of the preceding painters. But one of the particularities that she was a woman. And a woman to be a painter in the end of the 19th century was a very rare thing. And the very few painters of that time were consecrated to decorative and very utilitarian application of the paint. And they were not truly artists. In the Stockholm Academy of Art, they begin to admit women as artists about a few years before she could join this Stockholm Academy of Art. So she was one of the first women who developed her artistic career in an academic environment as men could. One of the particularities of her work is that she at the same time had two kinds of works in parallel. He painted this kind of pictures you can see here. For example, this is a figurative, this is a landscape, a house, a farm, a chariot here, a forest with trees, perhaps some snow, some paths here, okay? Nothing spectacular, nothing unknown for us. Here is the signature, her signature, Ilma af Klint, 1991 probably. And he made some studies in botanic field. She painted, I don't know if I have some example here. I think I do not. But, well, he painted flowers and plants because she was very curious about the botanic and the vegetable world. So she painted a lot of observation of the flowers and insects and small things related to nature. And at the same time, she performed this kind of works. You see? What is here? Nothing. Nothing known. A lot of color, lines, and perhaps some symbols. We are going to analyze some of them. She lived this life in the sort of secrecy because she was not willing to expose to the general critic his work. And recent research tell us that the first abstract paintings of her are prior to Kandinsky's first abstract painting. So she painted in an abstract language in the same time and perhaps before Kandinsky without knowing each other. So it's as it were in the artistic atmosphere, in a suprasensual atmosphere, was the idea of painting this way. So a lot of painters at the same time painted in the same way with the same intention. They had this like a superior or a spiritual inspiration to do this as if they were in agreement. That was not the case. So this is the picture of the first important exposition of Ilma af Klint's work in Los Angeles at this time, 1986. And I discovered recently a film you can find on the net about the life and work of Ilma af Klint. I encourage you to see it. It's a very nice Swedish film. You can find in internet if you look. I don't know if it is in Netflix. I think it is not there, but I'm not sure. And look at the size of the pictures. You see a person here that is 3 or 4 meters length, each of one. Well, for example, we have some of the pictures here, and she used color, line, harmony, of course, and some symbols. The snail or spiral, we can find it very, very often. Symbol perhaps of evolution. The buttonhole hook, blue, yellow, little pink pears, a representation of the feminine and masculine duality. The letter W, matter, or the hue, the U, spirit. The swan, symbol of manifestation and time. The dove is love or good. Well, those are interpretation of the universal symbolism. The cross, of course. Let's see some details here. For example, this flower with a snail in the center, these letters in each petal, different colors, some spirals in each petal or circles. You see in the corners of the whole picture, like signaling the cardinal points, perhaps. We don't know exactly. Here we have another work with some written things. Ari, Eros, perhaps it's love, we don't know, Ure. Okay. And the way she worked was making series that should not be read separately. For example, we have this is the representation of the theory of evolution developed in Theosophical writing. She was a TS member. She and Mondrian were TS members. So we have, for example, here, the first of the series, evolution. We have 3 people. It's not completely abstract. It's half abstract, half symbolic. It's like a Christ, with the arms developed like a crucified person. Then we have 2 people at the sides, perhaps are the thieves that were crucified with Christ, or perhaps we can give them another interpretation. The red one is praying, perhaps. The other one is looking down to the earth. Perhaps one represents the spirit, the other the matter, and in the center is the equilibrium of both things. You see, in each hand there is a cross, one white, one dark, one black. Perhaps we can find some significance there. We have the second of the series, same characters, different attitudes. I could not give an explanation because I don't know. We don't know. We have to think by ourselves about the significance we can give this philosophical knowledge, of course. Then the third, characters disappear. Pure symbolist. Snails, cross, snails on the cross, snails red behind the cross. Lot of things to think about. Characters reappear, but only 2, the snail in the middle. And finally, we have these 2 curious things, snails that are present in with a cross in every picture, and 2 dogs. What is this? One black, one white. Always one white, one black. And finally, this perhaps representation of the celestial man, of the perfect man, like 2 lotus, two snails, water, and the lotus also up, white, as the spiritual world, perhaps. Well, and like this, we have a lot of series. We can see here some, as an example, there is this, I don't know in English, how do you call this kind of animals, like, ¿cómo se dice? Well,
Swan.
Swan, that's swan. And two swans, white and black fighting. We have another series. Well, I invite you to do your own research on the internet or to have Ilma, because, as I said, she had this kind of esoteric, so to say, work in parallel with the exoteric or normal painting she used to expose and to show to everyone. Okay, to finish, this is the last, one of the last slides. You see the slide, continuous change of evolution. So here you have a picture of Ilma and the text of Kandinsky. They do not know each other, but you see the idea is the same. He says, represented schematically, the spiritual life would be an acute triangle divided into unequal parts. The smallest and most accurate point upwards, of course. As it descends, each part becomes wider, because it is a triangle, of course, larger and more voluminous. The triangle has a slow, barely visible movement forward and upward, where the highest vertex is today. The next section will be found tomorrow. And this symbolizes the journey of the soul and the man's spiritual search of cosmic unity. So you see, for example, here in the base of this triangle of many colors as different rays, the different chords of souls of humanity that are progressing to the final goal, that is the spiritual illumination, that is the sun that is up in this pyramid or triangle. And you see that as in the way you go up, these different rays of souls are synthesized, and from being very different from each other, they get closer and closer as they progress in the spiritual path to the primitive or primeval unity from where they came at the beginning. Like it's a representation of human evolution that very different. The seven rays in the base are less and less different as finally they reach the primordial unity. It's one of the interpretation, and we can make this parallel between the teachings of Kandinsky and the representation of Ilma. Perhaps this is our interpretation. And to finalize, this is a quotation of Rada Bournier, our last international president, that said that there is beauty in shapes and colors, in sounds and textures, in the things that we perceive with our senses. But there is also beauty in things that we never set our minds on. That is, in the mutual relationship of all things, in the functions that they fulfill, and in their hidden purposes. That is, well, it's to you to make a final interpretation, but beauty is a clue aspect to spiritual developing. And beauty is not all it's not all only found in things themselves, but also in the relation relationship that exists between things. That is what the painters call harmony or composition, equilibrium, or what else. So we have to find the beauty in things and the beauty and harmony in the distribution, in what links the things between them. Well, that's all I have to show and to share with you.